There is a place the eye cannot see, where the horizon folds into mist, a hidden land of silver rivers and skies that breathe in colors unknown. It lingers at the edge of every dream, close enough to feel, too far to hold. And still it waits, a quiet kingdom beyond the veil.
So the idea for this project actually started off as more of an experiment that I was just trying to figure out in Logic how Artemis did these amazing Arp Spirals in his tune Elysian Fields. It's such a dope tune, and then later on it kind of goes up with a spiral and then comes down again. So I've always sort of thought it was something to do with the pentatonic minor scale, but I've never actually kind of actually dug in and properly figured it out. And so all I have here, it's actually so simple to set up in Logic. All I have here is a sine wave. So I've taken a bass sound and I've just looped it up to essentially make a sine wave. And then I've got a delay on it. I'm going to a half note delay with a send, and I'm also sending it to like a kind of large reverb. So sine wave, delay, reverb, and then the only other thing to do is really to focus on the MIDI. And if I just show you my example here, I've probably got a slightly different tone to his track. And maybe the notes are different, but the idea is definitely, so you can go up. You can also, here I'm doing every 16th note, I've got a note on, but you can go down, or you can spread them and do sort of 8th notes. So I was using these in lots of different ways in this track I've been making, and basically in Logic, if we just create a little MIDI region, all you got to do is get the brush tool and then come in here and figure out whatever scale your tune is in. And if you don't know, what I would generally do is just make some pads like I have in this song. And then I will go and use this plugin called Mixed in Key. And so I can just see this pad is B minor. So I know that my scale wants to be in B minor. Then we can select our MIDI region and just go to B and minor pentatonic there. And then the last thing to do is actually put it on the brush tool. And then you can just hold Command and basically swipe through, and it will only put in scale notes in. And this will probably just work if I play it with the pad straight off the bat. So it's not bad, and it's very easy. You know, I could just come in here and basically delete this whole thing and try a different one. Maybe an up and down. You could hold Alt and stretch it out as well to double it, and then it would go. And of course, you know, if you're doing this in a synth like Serum, you can change the waveform, and you've got lots more tools to play with. But even with a very basic sine wave, you can get some really good results. What I'm actually doing with this sine wave is driving it a little bit, so it sounds like this with a more pure kind of sine. But then this drive adds a bit more bite. Anyway, really simple technique, but very effective. So I've only got time for a short video today, But maybe that would be a good thing. So I'm just going to hone in on a couple of points and maybe come back and talk about this whole track in more detail next time. But the first thing is, and a little way to slide in a bit of promotion, is I've made this whole tune from basically all of my sample packs. Like the breaks are these new break instruments I've been talking about a lot that I've been putting on Patreon, and then all of the samples are from various sample packs. And what I wanted to touch on really is when you're building a tune from lots of samples, probably the most important thing is obviously sample selection and finding the sounds in the first place. But when you're drawing them from a sample pack, they're all there, is to match the keys of all the sounds. And this pad, this kind of final pad sound, which is a really lush kind of moving, transforming sort of dreamy pad. You can see there's a bit of modulation going on in this actual sampler. But the way I made this was to basically take all of these pad sounds. So we have this pad that kind of starts the track off. If I come to this section, and I essentially just matched, like I kept dragging in more pads. So I've got the James the Dealer pad as well, but you see I've had to tune this one to match it to be in the same key. So if I keep adding these, I could even try and pitch this one up an octave. Maybe it's cool just thickening out there. So I've got now 2 pad layers. And then I've got this sparkly layer, which is definitely from Echoes of Light. I think Alex made this one, where I've just done a bandpass filter, so I'm kind of keeping this in the mid-range. So now we have 3 pad layers, all which have been tuned. Well, this one was actually already in the right key, it looks like. And then I've got another chord layer. I've also had to tune this one. So it's really all about making sure all of these samples are fitting in the same key. And actually what would be better is if I just drag this whole thing out, so it's just one continuous sound. And then I think with these extra layers, all I've done is actually I just pitched them up an octave. So I've really got 5 layers here of different samples that I've kind of used some filtering to help blend them together and ping pong loops, but mostly I'm just matching the key of these sounds. So once I had all of these pad layers working and tuned together, the next thing I did was actually just bounce them down so they were one single layer of audio, and then I chucked that into a sampler, and so bring that pad layer in, and then that gave me the ability to play it up and down the keyboard and find once I got this resampled pad layer moving a little bit with these filters, and I pitched it around to find a key I liked, I actually thought I would just leave this as just one continuous sound, so no pitching it up and down. It's just going to act as more of an atmospheric bed to the tune. And if you listen to this Artemis track, he's basically done exactly the same thing, where the pad is just kind of staying there. And I think it's part of this style is trying to transport you to this kind of other world, where the harmony is staying quite similar, but you just add these nice little samples and spirals and things over the top. So they're very harmonious tunes, like there's not much dissonance at all in this type of track. So everything just has to pitch to match this, the main harmony or the atmospheric bed of the tune. Regarding the leads in this track, I actually went through a bit of a sound design experiment on this one where I've just used a sine wave but then processed it actually just inside this quick sampler in Logic. So I'm not using any sort of insert effects. I'm only sending it to delays like this half note delay, a chorus and a reverb. But just mostly actually this drive is so good for adding kind of harmonics and brightening up a sine wave. If I show you this pluck, for instance, what I've done here is I've sent filter envelope to the filter drive. So what this is actually, this is the filter envelope down here, and this is the filter drive. And I've basically made it go right to the top. You can actually see it has a really good visual in Logic. So it's jumping up and down to give me this plucky sound. I could bring this out to make it more. So I just wanted right at the transient to be a bit brighter and then the rest of the sound to be more mellow, and that's giving me a pluck sound. But if I take actually this down, for instance, it's much more just a pure sine wave. So that's how I made the pluck, and then I have these two kind of melodies really. If I play everything, maybe just this section, which are essentially a call and response. Which I think when I first did this, I think I made these and they were next to each other. But it sounded better just giving it more space. You just want in a tune like this things to breathe a little bit more, because they're sometimes they're 7-minute tracks, so you just don't have to rush kind of the ideas. So that was the first one, and then I have this one is just a much softer. So I'm still driving it a little bit. I'm doing a bit of side to side panning as well. So it's the half note delay. If I take the delay and reverb off, sounds very bland. Yeah, so reverb and delay really essential for making things come to life. This glide might be a cool one to show you as well, where if I open up region automation, I'm doing a pitch bend. And if I come into all the details here, I think you go in details, I'm doing it only goes 2 semitones on the pitch bend, so all the way down, that's dropping 2 semitones there. But what's cool is on the actual sampler in Logic, you can use this unison. So if I put this off, it's a bit more bland, but you can get this beating sound, and I can make it really extreme as well. So it almost works a little bit like Serum, where you detune the different voices. You can do that in sampler in Logic, and a cool way to get from quick sampler to sampler is you can actually, on any sound, if you have quick sampler open, you can just change it to sampler and it'll actually retain all of the elements inside it. So this has still got this kind of sine wave in here, all looped up. The last thing to quickly talk about is this Hotpants Mega Break instrument, because someone was asking me what I would do with this in Logic. Right, I've shown a lot in Renoise, me kind of making breaks in them, but not so much in a DAW like Logic. And maybe this isn't the best track because it's a bit of a roller, but there's a few things here that are going on. One is actually, if I show you this break, I've had to trim this one region because there's a little bit of a kick. Can you hear it has like almost a flam where there's a kick that's kind of coming right at the end of this longer section. So sometimes you have to listen quite keenly and think, is this break rolling perfectly? And if it isn't, why isn't it? And sometimes there's just a little bit of a kind of a MIDI region you have to drag back. So it takes a bit of finessing where you don't want to always hear like a big audible gap. But I've managed to clean up. I think because I left these breaks unquantized when I made this break instrument, sometimes these things will just happen. And then the other thing is, this is kind of a better example in this section of where I've done a bit more of an experimental kind of passage, but still pretty laid back because it's much more of a roller tune. So I have a big long kick with a reverb into a snare with a reverb, and there's another snare with a reverb. And the reason I included these whips is because they're really easy to make in Renoise, but in Logic you've got no way to kind of reverse individual MIDI regions that easily anyway, so you can actually have this cool. And so without this whip, it doesn't draw you back in to the next kind of drop, so it gives it more impact having that kind of forwards and backwards with the whip. So it's sounding pretty cool, this tune, and I'm going to come back in the next one and explain things a little bit more. Maybe just do a kind of taking this track from this point and finishing it would be a cool video, because I definitely like how I've started it. And I think that'll be a great next video. So I will catch you then. Have a great weekend, everyone. And yeah, big ups. Thanks.